Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to talk to you guys about my thoughts on the best new character from the list of 7 heroes and villains that we got from this latest Asgard update. But guys, before we get into that, I just want to make a really quick announcement that I am going to be streaming once again 10 hours from the drop of this video at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. For any of you in the comment section that were asking to see my clears of 12.5, 12.6, 12.7, and 12.8 to get Odin, you can check that out on the live stream because it doesn't really make sense to make a standalone video just for that. So I encourage you to come onto YouTube Gaming and check me out live not too long after this video drops if you do want to see that and a lot of other fun things. So let's get back into it, guys. Who is the best character of the 7 new Asgardian characters that we got? Well, for starters, I am going to X off or exclude Odin, the Allfather, from this list. You can't farm him regularly. He's gated behind huge requirements both in black antimatter and gold, and it's just not a reasonable expectation for most of the player base to be able to get Odin anytime soon. I can't even have him maxed out just yet. So I'm going to be knocking him off this list, and I'm just going to look at the 6 remaining heroes and villains. Now, I just wanted to give you guys a little preface before we get into the actual skill preview and my justification for where I rank these characters. Let's take a look at both their typing, and also whether they're a superhero or a supervillain in order to give you a little bit more information about why I rank them the way that I do. So Fandral is speed, and he's male, and he's hero. So in my eyes, low stats, but is eligible for the speed hero day, which as of right now is still pretty difficult for most players, given like tier 2 Elsa, tier 2 Black Widow, tier 2 Gwenpool. So who knows, Fandral could be a welcome addition to that and bump up people's scores. Then we have Hogan, who's a combat male hero. Again, we don't really need a lot more combat characters, and we also don't need any more heroes. We do already have Moon Knight, Iron Fist, Werewolf, She-Hulk. There's lots of good ones, so a little bit disappointed with the typing, but that's okay. Then we have Ulik, very important, a supervillain who is combat. We do not have a lot of those. We do not have a lot of good, reliable ones. I think Kingpin and Nebula are 2 of the only ones, aside from Carnage. And he's also one that has a lot of AoE, which is also lacking in combat characters in general, so that will be interesting to see how that plays out. And then we have Hela. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right. Maybe it's Hela. Shout out H3H3. And Hela is a female supervillain, so she's eligible for both the female day and for the extreme supervillain day, which right now has been really dominated by Black Order characters like Proxima, Supergiant, Corvus. So it will be interesting to see if I can see a fit for her, if she can actually make some of a dent and make an impact in that game mode to give free-to-play players or players who don't have the means to rank up Black Antimatter and collect those required resources to get Hela that way and use her for Extreme Alliance battle. Finally, in the last 2 spots, we have Volstagg. I love his chub, guys. He's fat and he's proud of it. And check that beard, guys. He's a ginger chub, and I love the tuck, guys. That belt is doing so much fucking work. It should get fucking Times Person of the Year right there. His belt. Excuse me, the Droop belt. Aptly named. Anyways, guys, Volstagg is another male hero who's also combat. Again, we don't need more of those, but as you will see, he does have some pretty interesting skills, and I'm quite satisfied with how the character plays, especially for a combat type. Lastly, we have Enchantress. I left her to the end because I suspect she's the best one, in part because she's the paywall character. So if you guys aren't familiar with what that means, Enchantress's bios can only be gotten from this monthly bonus 20 biometrics daily, which if you want to know how to get it, you have to go into the store and you have to pay real money for it. It's got the Carnage coin on it, and you pay about $11 in your native currency. And then every day for 30 days, you will get 20 bios to select, and you can use one of those days or all of those days or some of those days to get Enchantress, among others, Hyperion, Gwenpool, Carnage, and Clea. And then you can rank her up either that way or with rank up tickets after you've unlocked her. Enchantress is Blast Female, so she is not eligible for the Blast Male Alliance Battle Extreme Day, but she is a supervillain, which is sorely needed, especially for Shadowlands. So that's an interesting take on that. So we'll check out, starting with her, what is up with the skill preview. Now, I will say right off the top, guys, a lot of these characters have summons. It's something that I'm very happy to see because it was in my prediction for the Thor video. That video kind of wasn't very well received because of the timing of the video, and it was kind of awkward on my part, but I had to get it out there for you guys. So check that out if you want to see some, you know, hindsighted prophecy. So starting off with Enchantress, she's got some very, very interesting skills, and she seems to be a very, very powerful character from all accounts so far. So her 1-star skill is pretty average, but it does have an iframe, as you can see there after the initial hit. She's got a long iframe with movement, so if you can time the first hit, you shouldn't take any damage for the next second to second and a half because of that teleportation. Kind of like Black Cat in that sense. That's what it reminded me of. Very nice skill. Her 2-star skill is super overpowered. It's a charm for 5 seconds. And as you can see, those little hearts, if you've ever played a game like Pokemon, mean that the enemy is charmed and they can't attack. Sadly, this works on both world bosses and invasion world bosses, so you can pull some pretty troll moves, especially since this skill has a super low cooldown, and you can basically just charm the opponent to the point where they just can't move. I kind of hoped that charm would make them attack for you and attack the other enemies, because that would make for some really hilarious moments. Unfortunately, that's probably too difficult to build into the AI, and too difficult to kind of calculate all the damage output that would create in terms of the mix-matched variables. But it's nice to see this style of CC come in, because as of right now, I think MODOK is the only charm-resistant character in the game. So maybe MODOK meta coming up pretty soon. I know that Night Nurse would be very happy to hear about that. But anyways, this skill is super powerful, guys. Short cooldown, even has an iframe, not that you can tell because she's charming all of these AIs. So just kind of a broken skill, to be honest. Then Enchantress's 3-star skill, you've come to know and love these guard skills, but to boot, this guard skill also creates these balls, which will, after a short delay, release in different directions potentially and deal damage. They will kind of fly forward, so you can kind of whiff this attack sometimes, but having a guard plus an attack is much better than anything we've come to get used to with most guard skills, so can't complain there. On to the 4 skill, guys. Very good iframe there, and she basically summons these twirling balls, which will shoot out after some time, kind of like Songbird's 6-star skill, and will do some damage. So this is a delayed damage skill, but basically you should just cast it either for the iframe animation to get out of damage, or you should just cast it and then immediately cancel into another skill, because you won't see the balls, but they will still be there popping out and dealing damage, so you can up your DPS that way by canceling it. Then her last skill, guys, very, very powerful, very long iframe. It's only 1 round of hits, so it only hits each enemy once, but it seems to be pretty good damage, and it does last for a little bit of time, and it does CC as well, which is really, really nice. Overall, Enchantress is a very powerful character. Most of her skills have iframes or some form of CC. She's got an extremely powerful and new CC that's unique to her character. Basically, the only thing she's missing is like a heal to make her absolutely top tier. But a very good character, and I would probably rank her first because of that charm alone. But all in all, guys, you can probably go through most of her skills without getting hit, and when you do get hit, you have a guard, so it's going to be very difficult to die with her if you're playing manually. Awesome character. Next up, we have Volstagg. Now, I love Volstagg for a lot of different reasons. I mean, the way he runs alone is just super cute, and how he holds the sword. It's kind of like he doesn't know what he's doing, or he kind of doesn't want to be there, but he is. Anyways, enough of this charmer. His 1-star skill is pretty average. It's just a bump and tug here with a little bit of a boof at the end. Pretty bad skill, but whatever. It's fine. 2-star skill is a reflect skill. So that blue bubble is actually a physical reflect. As you can see there, it will reflect 50% of physical damage up to a 20% of the attack. This skill is not really useful for the damage it does there with those 2 slashes. So what you want to do is you want to press the 2 skill and then cancel it into something else. That's way you'll still get the physical reflect, and then you'll be able to move around and not get stuck into this long, vulnerable animation. Thankfully, Volstagg is not all hugging and soft, gooey insides. His 3-star skill is a very nice 5-second damage immunity. So you will need to be pierced to get damaged when you're in this mode. Simple debuffs will not work. So only pierce effects will work to damage Volstagg when he's in this mode here. And it also gives him an all-speed buff, which is excellent. So this is probably the move you want to open with when you're first starting off with Volstagg. And then you might want to go into the 2 skill and then start something else like the 5 or the 4. Speaking of which, holy fucking shit, guys. The Asgardian heroes are summoned, a la the Barbar in D3, when you press Volstagg's 5 skill, or his 6-star skill. The amazing thing about this 5 skill, guys, is that both of the summons, Fandral and Hogan, do regular attacks. They don't just do basic attacks, they actually do some of their skill attacks with stuns and with CC, as you can see there. And they last a pretty long time, so they can definitely take a lot of AI's attention and take a lot of aggression away from your character and let you do other moves in combination, which is awesome. As well, guys, the 4 skill is a massive AoE, so it would be very excellent to tag team those attacks together, and it's a long iframe, so you should probably do the 5 into the 3 into the skill canceling into the 2 into the 4. You have to be a little bit quick with the button presses there to skill cancel through all of them, but if you can, it's amazing. So you'll have 5 seconds of immunity, you'll have damage reflect, and you will have a massive AoE. And that's why I'm so high on Volstagg, because of that 4 skill. That insane AoE with a very long iframe is going to be super useful for Combat Hero Extreme Alliance Battle, which is something that still is pretty difficult even with Shang-Chi and Moon Knight Tier 2. So I'm really happy with this character as well. He's got a very good Tier 2 passive, giving everyone that's a hero on the team 20% reduced damage. His leadership kind of sucks, but he shouldn't be the leader anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Awesome, awesome character. Very happy with the animations and the rotation and the skills, and definitely going to use a lot of Volstagg. Moving on to the next one, we have Ulik, the combat villain. Now, I've seen some people saying that they think he's the best new character. I don't agree, but I do think he's a little bit underrated, and I would preface my review of him by saying he's most like, in my opinion, most like Black Dwarf. Not only in his stature and his kind of like husky look, and maybe even in the way that he stands is similar to Black Dwarf now that I look at it a little bit more closely, but just in terms of his skill set and what he does. So let's go through what he does. His 1-star skill is just a very basic smash, pound, whatever you want to call this, beat him up Steven Seagal. No iframes, just damage, just whatever. His 2 skill is a little bit more interesting. It's got a stun and a little bit of an AoE, but again, it's got intermittent iframes, so you are a little bit vulnerable in between. When he's jumping, you're iframed, but when you're not jumping, when you're landing, he can get hit in between. So you can still get punished when using this skill. It's not super reliable or super safe. Thankfully, his next skill it gives him a physical damage immunity, so you need to be careful about that because it will not give him energy damage immunity, but it also gives him increased damage against hero types, which will be really useful for Shadowland. Not so useful for World Boss and World Boss Invasion, except I guess against Odin, which is the final boss of the week. But we have to yet see how good Ulik is going to fare in that, and I don't suspect he's going to be any better than like regular Tier B characters. But it's a pretty cool skill. It's got a little bit of a pushback here. I like the roar. I like the animation. Can't complain. It's unique, and it's cool. I like it. His 4-star skill is a little bit more interesting, and here's where he kind of starts to seem like Black Dwarf again for me. A lot of moving, a lot of hitting, and the stun at the end, but it's really the 5 skill that sells it for me on the Black Dwarf imitation. This basically looks very similar to Black Dwarf's animation for his 5 skill, except he does 1 slam instead of 2, and then the slam when he comes down seems to do a lot more, has a lot more hits, and does a lot more AoE damage. So this will be hopefully particularly good for Extreme Alliance Battle combat villain, because as you can see here, after the slam, it's all iframe as he jumps up, and it seems to do a lot of AoE damage in a very wide radius, so that could be good for clearing out a lot of mobs and really racking up your score. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any like go-to iframes. They're all hidden in between his skills, so there isn't really a good rotation that you can really go with. But in general, in order to try to reduce the damage that you take, you probably want to open with the 3 and then either go into the 2 for the iframe or the 5 for the AoE plus the iframe. Pretty good character. I think he fits a need in terms of Extreme Alliance battle more than actually being a new meta character, but that's okay. We don't always get, you know, home run kings with every single update. Our last combat is another hero, Hogan. He also has a very lovable summon skill that we'll get to real quick, but first let's check out his other Mongolian abilities. His 1-star skill is pretty straightforward. It's just 2 hits, but it does apply a stun and a bleed. Very helpful for Shadowland. His 3-star skill, I don't know why I skipped the 2, but his 3-star skill is very useful because it applies an all defense debuff. So that will allow you to do more damage in a shorter amount of time, whether it's with Hogan or another character. So there might be some cool shenanigans where you can hit this skill and then switch to another character and unload a massive DPS assault. His 2-star skill is pretty boring and pretty average and not iframeable. So very vulnerable, dangerous, not good. His 4-star skill is a little bit better here for a couple of reasons. One, as you can see here when they start shooting me, the jump up is not an iframe, but it will avoid most attacks. Sadly, the rest of the assault is not an iframe, but it does have a stun and a pull-in and an AoE. So this will be very good for grouping up mobs and doing some damage. And I could potentially see some combos where you have a character like this who groups up all the mobs, then you quickly switch to someone like Iron Fist and you unload his dragon skill and just wipe the screen. Very, very cool. Then Hogan's 6-star skill, or his 5 skill, summons the boys. Coming in all shapes and all sizes, Fandral and Volstagg coming in, doing some work, doing their skills. As you can see, they don't just do basic attacks, they're actually doing their skills. Very, very awesome. Hogan's attack itself is really not that special. It's basically a single target DPS with a little bit of AoE at the end. It looks cool. It's a bit whirlwindy. It's a bit barbar. But aside from the maybe nod, maybe homage to Diablo, it's a pretty bad attack. The summons are great though. Can't deny the value of the summons. But just the fact that there aren't any iframes on his skills make him probably one of the more worst characters for me. The summons do pull a lot of weight for Hogan, but aside from the summons and aside from the debuff on the 3-star skill, he doesn't seem to be very valuable because of his vulnerability. Next up we have Fandral. Now, people were pretty hyped about Fandral because he has that obelisk damage effect on his passive skill. Unfortunately, his tier 2 only increases that by 15%, so instead of doing 120 damage, it does 135. Kind of lackluster for a tier 2 skill, to be honest, but he also gets some increased guaranteed dodge, so that's not bad. But let's check out what our speed hero does. His 1-star is pretty boring. It's just a bunch of attacks, no iframe, vulnerable, weak. Yeah, just whatever. His 2-star skill, pretty much more of the same. Like, I don't really know how to tell the 1-star from the 2-star, to be perfectly honest with you. The 2-star has a flip, that's about it. I imagine the 2-star is an iframe, and from what I can see it is, but after that it goes into non-iframe, so kind of a useless skill. It's probably better to use the flip and then skill cancel into something else, but yeah, kind of like Black Widow in that sense. Then we got Fandral's 3-star skill. Seems a little bit better because there's a lot of movement built into the skill. So I can see this one being a little bit more useful, but again, no iframe in the middle, so pretty vulnerable overall. His 4-star skill is a little bit better now. We've got a long stun and an AoE, which is pretty nice. He does stay stationary for a while he's spinning the sword, and unfortunately, you can't really cancel the skill because it does stop the sword. So I'll give you an example here. The sword starts to spin, and then if I skill cancel, the sword stops spinning. So I cannot leave that residual damage up while I do something else, a la Doctor Strange's 3-star skill, which kind of does take away from the value of this skill because you have to stay rooted for its duration, which is like a good second and a half. It's nothing to, you know, it's nothing to ignore. So not really happy with how the skill was designed. Not the best skill in my mind. Then we have Fandral's 5-star skill. Here we go, one more time. The boys are back in town. Volstagg and Hogan, putting it up for the Mister. Very, very happy to see these boys make one more appearance. I love seeing these types of summons. I think we should have more of them in the game. Coulson has them as well, now that it comes to mind, and they're just so much fun to see other characters jump in for you. It's almost like your friends are playing alongside you, and I just love seeing them use their like most OP skills, if you get lucky, to deal massive damage. I mean, the skill itself outside of the summons is pretty bad. It's just 2 single target attacks, so nothing to really care for except the summons. I probably think that Fandral is the weakest character of all of them from this list, unfortunately, because he's a speed hero. We don't need more speed heroes in general. We're pretty good on that front, and as well, speed characters have the lowest stats, so the summons will be the worst out of them all. And a really good example of a character that sucks with their summons, unfortunately, is Red Skull. Now, there is some niche use for the character, like a low-level Rumble and Shadowland and stuff like that, but outside of those situations, the character just doesn't have enough in the tank to really get the job done and go from, you know, Milwaukee to Detroit. So, kind of disappointed, but that's okay. Maybe someone will find a better use for Fandral than I seem to have. Lastly, we have Hela or Hela. Again, I don't know how to pronounce the name, so correct me in the comments. Again, I was seeing a lot of people saying that she's probably one of the best new characters. I'm not so sure about that, but she's pretty high on my list. I'd probably rank her like 3rd or maybe 4th. So let's check out and see why. Because from reading her skill descriptions and from reading her leadership and stuff, she seems to be very focused on buffs and debuffs, which, to be honest, is not really that important in PvE stuff. So most of the player base is not going to care for that at all. It's mostly for PvP action, which I don't even know if she'll be able to break the meta and get into. So there might just not be a mode for her to be consistently popular and, you know, best in slot for yet. But let's check out what Hela does right. So she's a universal supervillain, which is an excellent typing. Then we can see from her 1-star skill, just a very basic guard break attack, not an iframe, just meandering in terms of AoE and stuff like that. Pretty bad. Probably want to put that out of the rotation if you can manage to get your skill cooldown high enough. Her 2-star skill is a little bit better. As you can see, there's multiple hits in there. There's an iframe at the beginning, actually a long iframe for the majority of the attack, and there's movement on her part, and there's a triple debuff. So that is an all attack, all defense, and I believe speed down debuff, something like that. Anyways, lots of debuffs from her on that skill. Very powerful and should be useful in game modes like World Boss Invasion. Then we have her 3-star skill, which is not useful for World Boss Invasion on 2 of the days. Hint, hint, press the purple button. It summons some clones. They're not really clones, they're just like generic kind of warriors. But it's pretty good. There's 3 of them, so that's going to take a lot of attention away from Hela. And although they just seem like they do basic attacks, they are pretty tanky. So it's pretty good to put her out of the way. And it does have a long iframe as a wind-up for it. So you can dodge damage that way and then dodge even more damage while they take hits for you. Could be good in Extreme Alliance battle mode. Then Hela's 4th-star skill, or her 4th skill, is very, very cool, and it reminds me a lot of Mordo. She flies up in the air, she does a massive AoE, and then she comes down and does more damage. She also has another debuff on this skill. That would be like the 2nd or 3rd one so far. Very, very cool animation. Seems like the damage is quite good. It bunches up the enemies so you can make sure that you're going to deal a lot of damage to a lot of them consistently. As you can see there, that bunching action. Very, very good overall, very strong. And then her last skill, another very long iframe, and again with a lot of AoE damage and a bind. So very, very strong skill. Potentially very, very strong for Extreme Alliance Battle Supervillain Day, but we will have to see how that comes out into testing once we have that day back on the docket. But overall, I think she's a very strong character. She does have a lot of interesting skills. We haven't seen a lot of characters that are focused a lot on debuffs. We have characters who buff and characters who remove buffs, but characters who actively add a lot of debuffs to lower your attack and lower your defense. We don't just have a lot of those consistently yet, and Hela might be the first one of that list. Her tier 2 is not that impressive. It just increases the damage and potency of her debuffs, and then it gives her a little bit of guaranteed dodge, but it's not bad. I would have liked to see something with the summons, but you know, we can't have it all. Overall, guys, I would say that I think Enchantress is the most powerful of the new characters. I understand that people who are free to play will not be able to get her, but if you do have the opportunity to get a bioselector, it would definitely be a good idea to get her on one of your days and then maybe use a mega rank up ticket. I also do really like Hela and Volstagg for different reasons. I think that their kits are very complete and they seem like very well-rounded characters. I'm not so hot on the last three that we have there, Ulick, Hogan, and Fandral. I'm probably least happy with Fandral and then Hogan because he just doesn't do enough differently from Volstagg. He just seems like a worse version of Volstagg. I know he has the debuffs and the buffs, but it just doesn't really make up for the rest of the things that are lacking in his kit, and his lack of iframes just make it impossible to see him shine over Volstagg in any one particular area. Ulick is probably third or fourth. It will really depend on how well he does in combat supervillain. If he excels, he could be as high as second on my list, but that's yet to be seen, so I can't really say definitively. But overall, my ranking would be something like Enchantress, Volstagg, Hela, Ulick, Hogan, Fandral. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what your thoughts are on these characters, who you have, who you spent your mega rank up tickets or your tier 2 tickets or your mega tier 2 tickets on. And of course, guys, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.